What goes on behind the scenes at one of the most cutting-edge, advanced biohacking facilities in the world? What tools and therapeutics and strategies are they employing to get their clients the best possible outcomes? This week, we're exploring that and how these subtle energies, these less tangible energies, influence and shape the physical realm. Our guest this week coined the concept of what she calls Your Pristine Blueprint, which is basically the energetic infrastructure that governs the formation, maintenance, and coordination of your body. The more you deviate from that blueprint, the faster your rate of aging and the worse your health. Conversely, when you align with your pristine blueprint, your health improves and your rate of aging slows down. To quickly summarize some of the key takeaways I had from reading her book, which is appropriately named Your Pristine Blueprint, that'll set the stage to help you better understand everything we discuss throughout this episode. First, we are all part of a unified field of energy information. Some people call that the mind of one, pure consciousness, source, all that stuff. And basically, that is the field of unlimited potential and the source of all creation. Each of us has our own unique pristine blueprint, which is an energetic template in that unified field that guides your formation, development, and optimal functioning. Your health and well-being depend on how well you resonate with that blueprint. Lack of resonance, also called dissonance, within your blueprint can be caused by trauma, limiting beliefs, unprocessed emotions, environmental toxins, and other factors that create distortion patterns in your energetic field, in turn disrupting your ability to extract energy and information from the unified field. Healing is simply clearing those dissonant patterns and restoring resonance. That's done through things like conscious choice, energy healing techniques and modalities, and also some modern technologies. Speaking of modern technologies, we discuss some high-tech and low-tech ways of identifying and eliminating those factors that cause disruption. We discuss the difference between biohacking and biooptimization, some of the basics of resonance physics, the role of sacred geometry, of course, some energy medicine and how the energetic signature works. We explore some of her favorite ingredients and supplements, including one that she helped co-found, which is called Manna. I actually recorded a podcast with another co-founder of Manna, David Reed, back on episode number 150, if you want to check that one out to go deeper and explore how those work and the transformative experience they can provide. We talk about photodynamic therapy, heavy metals, EMFs, and the future of biohacking. Our guest this week is Dr. Beth McDougall. For over 20 years, Dr. Beth has been transforming the practice of medicine, bringing innovative therapeutics to thousands of patients. She is advancing a new paradigm, one at the intersection of medicine and contemporary physics, and has coined the term unified field medicine, describing health in the larger context of our relationship to the life force that informs, animates, and connects us all. Thinking about health in this larger context provides solutions for slowing aging and optimizing our lives. Beth also wrote a book introducing this paradigm, which I've already referenced, called Your Pristine Blueprint. You can find that wherever books are sold and also in the show notes for this episode, which will be at mindbodypeak.com/169. Yes, this is episode number 169, and I will include all the resources in the show notes. If you happen to be in my hometown of Mill Valley, you can check out her center called Jyzen, where they're bringing together the fields of integrative medicine, resonance science. If you want to give Manna Vitality a shot, you can go ahead and use the code URBAN and I believe that will save you 10% on your order. I like this one because if you know my supplement routine, I'm a big fan of an ingredient called shilajit. Ancient cultures throughout antiquity called it different things. It was used in a bunch of different places around the world. It was nicknamed the destroyer of weakness, the nectar of the gods, and a bunch of other things. It was one of those panaceas used for just about everything back in the day. The big issue with it is that it tastes terrible and is hard to find high quality sources. You can find it for as cheap as like $20 a kilogram for the really low quality stuff that doesn't do anything, up to as much as $20,000 per kilogram for the highest quality, highest end stuff. Luckily, this is in between, more towards the $20 per kilo side. I think it costs about $100 per 30 servings, so it's a bit pricey. But in my opinion, it's one of those supplements that replaces a bunch of other things, and because it also tastes decent, might be worth looking into and giving a shot for yourself to see if you notice a difference. Again, you can use the code URBAN to check out Manna Vitality, and they now have some other Manna products too. So go ahead and give those a shot. And now let's bring in Dr. Beth. Dr. Beth, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Nick.
As we were just talking offline, you currently live in Mill Valley, or you're based in Mill Valley, and that is my hometown. You're the first health optimizer I've interviewed from Mill Valley, so congratulations.
I know. So it's a good hometown. You're lucky to be from here.
When I was growing up there, I did not know of a facility called Jyzen over there. And before we dive into all the things you're up to, let's start off with the unusual non-negotiables you've done so far today for your health, your performance, and your bioharmony.
Well, I got up and meditated for a brief moment because I had an early training session with a personal trainer at 6:30. So I went, met her at the gym, and she's really working on my form when I do basic things like deadlifts and squats and bent arm like hangs and hanging from one arm and crawling and pushing a sled and pulling a sled and all of those things. And she's also a breath specialist. So we work a lot on kind of the breath and holding tension in the body when doing movements, and then kind of breathing against that tension, which is a really cool thing that is known by special forces and all of that. So I love the work I'm doing with her. And then came home, I usually would do this first, but since it was such an early morning, I did it after. I went and put my bare feet on the ground and did some stretching out on the lawn, let the sun come into my eyes. It was cloudy in the morning, but it's still, the photons entered anyway. And then had a beautiful breakfast. I should mention also, I came home from the gym and took some creatine, which I think is really an important thing to do. And then took a slew of important supplements and then came to work.
What a routine. And I like that you of natural health practices into your morning so far. And I know you have plenty of others in your arsenal as well as some of the cool modern stuff that we can do, such as learning about changing our breathing pattern while exercising and getting some enhancement from creatine and other modern conveniences. So we'll discuss your approach to blending the ancestral with the modern in this interview. But before we do, you wrote a book called Your Pristine Blueprint. And when I was going through your website, I loved what you described your pristine blueprint as being. Will you explain that for listeners?
Sure. So in the process of my kind of personal evolution and evolution of my career, I delved into studying biophysics and then quantum physics. So really got into kind of new thinking in physics and the understanding that we are all derived from a field of energy and information. And all creation is derived from this. And our entire material reality is kind of part of an unbroken fabric That's one thing. And this field of energy is infinitely dense with energy and contains information. So the question became, how do I arrive as an individual expression of this field? And how does all of creation arrive as these unique expressions of this one thing? And my sense is that at the moment of our conception, a field is formed. It's a three-dimensional blueprint of sorts that helps to guide our development and growth as an embryo. And then later in life, it guides our not only our growth and development, but our exquisitely complex physiology. So you have, basically millions of chemical events happening in every one of our 37 trillion cells every second in a coordinated manner. And so far, science has not really explained where that level of orchestration is coming from. And then when you think about the fact that we're just intersecting waves of information and we have this incredible complexity. And then when you then back up and think all of material reality is forming and annihilating trillions of times every second. It's literally flickering in and out of existence, going from matter to antimatter, et cetera. How is it that every time we reform, we're reforming into this kind of same structure that seems to be solid and working so well? And it's because we have this patterning of this beautiful blueprint. And then there's this communication happening between our physical form and the blueprint. And as we go through life, that communication can become corrupted by misinformation. And I believe that becomes the nidus for disease. And misinformation can come in various forms, like, the information signatures of pathogens or toxins, or the collective information signatures of traumatic experiences and unmetabolized emotions that we weren't equipped to deal with at the time.
How does this framework compare to another school of thought and idea, a concept called the morphogenic field?
It's very similar. And I really believe that our blueprint contains the information of the field of everything that we're comprised of. So it has field of magnesium and the field of L-tryptophan and all the other amino acids and all the other minerals and all of these fields. And then it has the field of the cell types, the liver cells, the bone cells, the blood cells, et cetera. And it's just these kind of like these series of nested fields that then create the information that is our entirety.
What you're describing sounds like a more complete version of what Dr. David Sinclair talks about in his analogies of like one of his theory of why we age, or one of them that he wrote about in his book called Lifespan, was about how if our genome is like a CD, as we live life, due to the issues of modernity, then we get scratches on that CD and then things start to devolve and dysfunction. But it seems like your paradigm is a little more complete and comprehensive and explains more than that would.
And potentially more hopeful, because I believe that the blueprint remains pristine. And it's truly the communication with the blueprint, our resonance with the blueprint, that becomes compromised. So you can almost think of it, the analogy of this kind of bidirectional communication that's happening almost like a radio signal. And then all of a sudden you start accumulating this misinformation that's like static on the radio. And so you kind of still hear the music. It's just not as clear and crisp. And, so then healing really becomes, how do we either remove or transmute the misinformation? And how do we restore the pristine communication with the right information? And then how do we really restore the energetics of the body that have been thrown off by this kind of dissonant disturbance?
So the first step there would be to understand the blueprint and where there's some misinformation. So how would you go about assessing that?
first of all, as a medical doctor, I will be depending on what someone's presenting with, I'll be looking to see, do they have any infections in the body? That need to be treated? Do they have microbiome imbalances? Are they eating foods that are not compatible with their bodies? Or are they eating contaminated food with like pesticides and additives and dyes and glyphosate and things like that? Are they using personal care products that are loaded with toxic chemicals and, dousing themselves in fragrances that are synthetic? Or, so I might be doing toxin testing, heavy metal testing, see if they have mycotoxin elevation, et cetera. And so we do want to get that stuff out on a physical level, like really open up the pathways of elimination for the kidneys, liver, and lymphatics, and really get that stuff moving out, treat infections that we find. But then it is important to go and remove energetic signatures that are left or almost imprinted in the body, the water compartments of the body, like a homeopathic remedy would be. So that takes us to some more biophysical type therapies. We work with kind of resonance biofeedback, and we're measuring dissonant signatures in the system, and then we can send back corrective signatures to cancel them out.
Okay. I want to explore those technologies too. But before we do, initially, when you're assessing someone, you just rattled off a number of different things that you would look for. And it seems like that would be very difficult for someone to do at home and say, okay, it's probably the perfume I'm wearing that's causing these issues and interfering, adding misinformation to my pristine blueprint. Are there any like frameworks that you use to go down that list and find potential issues there? Or when you do this with patients, clients, are you having like a long talk session with them just to understand their life and all the potential areas that could correlate with symptoms and underlying issues?
So let's say you're relatively healthy and you want to stay that way, and you are currently visiting a doctor. I would still say it behooves you to try to live a lifestyle that's resonant with your blueprint, and so that you minimize the accumulation of misinformation as you age. So what would that look like? That would look like eating pure organic food that has a high life force quotient, a lot of like living things, like green vegetables, multiple types of vegetables, live foods, of course, the right ratios of macronutrients for your system, focusing on protein and healthy fats, eliminating seed oils and things that are like rancid fats that can start to clog up your cell membranes, making sure your diet is free of chemicals and additives and glyphosate and all of that. Then also even get nitty gritty where like certain people have sensitivities to certain foods. So you would want to pay attention to like when you eat something, how do you feel after you do? Or do you feel uplifted by that or dragged down by that? Like, do you start get intestinal problems? You start having skin rashes? You want to be kind of like your own detective. So you want to work on your diet. I advise that you purify your water and preferably drink purified structured water. Look into getting a home system, because we take in not only so many chemicals in water from municipal water supplies, but we take in the energetic signatures of all the things that have passed through that water. The birth control pills, like the pharmaceuticals, the chlorine, the bromine, et cetera, et cetera. And then you want to adopt a meditative practice where that's very much body centered, where you're spending time in areas of the body where you're holding tension so that you can kind of learn what's there and trying to explore your energetic terrain so that you can kind of learn if you have stored trauma or unmetabolized emotions. Analyze your posture also. Do you hold yourself in habitual ways because of kind of unconscious beliefs about yourself that need to be kind of pulled up for examination to see if you want to keep them or not? And then just connect with nature. Have a lifestyle where you're going out in the sun in the morning and getting the sun in your eyes, that you're grounding with bare feet on the earth, that you're spending time in the coherent fields of a forest, or, in the ion rich and grounding environment of the ocean. You're going outside, and these things tend to have transmuting effects on the dissonance signatures within our bodies. The other thing I would say is watch out for energetic pollution, like Wi-Fi and
Bluetooth. Yeah.
even Bluetooth in your ears, and like dirty electricity, etc. So I'm a fan of putting your Wi-Fi on a timer and shutting it off at night. I've done that for years. I opt out of smart meters at my house and have a variety of different kind of EMF remediating devices and even geopathic remediating devices at the house and at the office. So, being mindful of that type of pollution also. And again, I could go on for hours on this, making sure your cleaning supplies are good, making sure your personal care products are healthy. Just being mindful that you're not kind of poisoning your body with lots of toxins, lots of recreational drugs, and also be mindful of what kind of media you're consuming. And, is it lifting? Is it bringing you down? Are you going down very depressing rabbit holes all the time? And, if you're working on your own without a doctor and you just want to reduce your accumulation of dissonance as you age, those would be the things you'd want to pay attention to. And I write a lot about that in my book, Your Pristine Blueprint. But then if you are sick and you are having trouble unwinding that, then I would advise you to see someone like myself and the other doctors here at our clinic, because we're trained medical detectives and we really know how to delve into your health and kind of find the underpinnings that are creating the dissonance and disturbing the physiology.
No, I love that. And when it comes to all those changes, it can be quite overwhelming if you're living like a typical American or just typical anywhere in the world lifestyle, and to change out all of your cleaning products and your personal care products and everything you own. But really it's about like making small changes here and there until you create a big change overall. Like when you run out of your favorite personal care product, using Think Dirty app or any of the other services to find a cleaner one to replace it with, instead of spending the first hour of your morning going on super long walks like I love to do in the sun, ideally grounded, just getting out for a minute and building that habit until it becomes second nature. And over time, you'll make all those changes and it won't be nearly as overwhelming as all the things we just listed if you don't do any of them currently.
Yeah, and think of it as your health insurance.
I've seen some interesting research on organic food too. People complain about the cost, but if you can compare the cost of, say, a pound of organic grass-fed, grass-finished beef to the cost of a Snickers bar, if you take the weight and you multiply it and get it in terms of like a full pound, the Snickers bar is more expensive. And there's research showing that on organic food, because of the micronutrient, xenonutrient, phytonutrient content, you get full, satiated 20 to 30% faster. So not nearly as clear as it seems that like, okay, this is so much more expensive, it's not worth it. And it's also like the preventative healthcare benefits you're getting from the cleaner food too.
Absolutely.
So you made a pretty compelling case to start with the physical. And once you start working on the physical, then it's going to free up some biological energy to go onto the other planes. You mentioned bioresonance testing. Can you explain what that is and how it works?
So everything in our reality has an information signature associated with it. That is literally the morphogenic field you're talking about, the blueprint, and it is why the thing is the thing. The information signature, it is what allows the thing to manifest. And it contains the same information as the physical object itself. So for example, back in 1992 or 3, I brought Candace Pert in to speak to my medical school. And when she was still alive, and she said something that changed my thinking forever. She said that that molecules have like a particular kind of electromagnetic field and resonance associated with it. Receptors for molecules have a particular electromagnetic field, and they're in resonance with one another. And you can produce the same effect at the receptor site from the molecule as you can from just the signature of the molecule. So that was a big eye opener. And now, that has changed my thinking and informed my thinking for the last 20 something years. And now I'm, chief medical officer of multiple companies that are that have technologies based on this thinking. So what we do is we have technology to measure aberrant signatures in the body. So signatures associated with toxins, with pathogens, with even diseased cells and diseased organs and things like that. And then we have corrective signatures. So signatures that are, maybe 90 degrees out of phase with the original signature that can cancel it out. And so we can project back information signatures through plasma devices and through scalar fields, and sometimes through electrodes, or sometimes through ultrasound probe, pulsed electromagnetic field devices, to communicate the corrective signatures. And then that will transmute the dissonant signatures. And then it's a biofeedback process. So then we're measuring again, kind of getting to the next layer and doing it with that, and then the next layer and the next layer.
Are there names for the bioresonance frequency measuring systems? Like, I'd assume the technology is called bioresonance frequency testing, something like that. But are there like specific things people can look into if they want to learn more about how this kind of thing works?
Yeah. I mean, so what we use here for the frequency database, the energetic signature database, is the Spooky 2 device. And then we send the corrective signatures through plasma bulbs. So that's how Raymond Royal Rife did it, sending it through plasma. We also send the signatures through Scalar. And we have very advanced Scalar devices here that are kind of proprietary to our group of companies, and they're otherworldly and beautiful. I have one in my office. I'm looking at it right now. And I have it in my office going. It's a scalar generator that's emitting Schumann resonance at all times.
Gotcha. I was about to ask you how this relates to the work of Dr. Royal Raymond Rife and also some of the other energy medicine practitioners, scientists early in the day, like Tesla was obviously one of them. And are these being used as diagnostics also? Like if I say had heavy metal issues, would I see that in my readings?
You would. And, we don't rely on it for diagnosis, but what I like about our center here is that we have medical doctors, that have gone through conventional medical training, that have done studying on the side to kind of become integrative doctors, and then also have grounding in the biophysics and the kind of energetic diagnostics and energetic therapeutics. And now this whole emerging train of kind of biohacking devices, which we'll get into, I'm sure. You ideally want to dovetail a variety of data streams. So, if we suspect heavy metals, we're not just going to go off of bioresonance testing and say, oh, you have heavy metals. We're going to probably do a provoked urine excretion testing with a chelator and measure 6-hour urine, see how many heavy metals come out. And so, but the value of doing it together is that you're working on a physical level and actually physically going into the body with those chelating agents, grabbing onto the heavy metals and pulling them out of the body, and then using the bioresonance biofeedback to remove the energetic signatures that linger even after the chemicals are gone. So it's a really good thing to combine.
So do the bioresonance frequencies always remain after the physical of something changes?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and for example, I'll see this a lot in people with Lyme disease, for example. So let's say someone at one point was bit by a tick, they have Lyme, maybe they have co-infections, they come to me, they're very sick. We work for a very long period of time to get them back to health, and they're doing great. And then they come right back in months later because they were bit by another tick. It's like some people are kind of these tick magnets, and could say, oh, it must be pheromones that they have, or it must just be where they live, or, but I think it has sometimes to do with the not clearing out the signatures properly. And it almost acts like a homing signal.
Would the same thing exist for, say, injuries? Like, say someone's very injury prone and they get injured by something that no one else in the group is getting injured by, and they just seem to get them over and over and over again. Could there be an energetic signature there?
Maybe, but also I could see structural asymmetry, that just makes them more vulnerable to injury in that area. So we tend to work, at Jyzen, we have kind of three main areas of focus. So one is the biology. So people come in, they have illness of some sort. So we have, we're working on the biological level there. The other is the brain, and the other is the structure. And it's mainly laid out that way in our 30,000 square foot center because I have noticed how people age and over the 26 years of my medical practice. And people tend to either develop a health problem or memory loss and a neurodegenerative disease, or maybe they're fine in the brain, super mentally sharp. They don't have any disease, but they have been athletic all their life and they now have a lot of wear and tear and like abnormal joint wearing, and maybe they need a knee replacement. Then now it's the hip, and now they have back problems, and then they become limited that because of the structure that was unattended to all of their years. So that we really like to do preventive maintenance and work on kind of like diagnosing structural asymmetries and reversing those, and then that kind of becomes a very holistic thing, because often we have these structural asymmetries because of emotional holding patterns that are unconscious that we need to delve into and all of that.
And in biology, the adage of structure dictates function means that if you have issues with your structure over time, it's going to change the way certain things function, and your body is just not going to work the way it should. And that could accelerate your rate of aging and lead to other downstream consequences.
Yeah. So if you're interested in optimal health and longevity and aging beautifully, it's you need to pay attention to your structure just like you do to your physical.
Okay. So first of all, you work on the physical, then you use bioresonance to understand the energetics. Then after that, you apply like corrective frequencies, I want to say. And what's the next layer of that process?
It depends on the individual. So it just really depends on what they're coming in with. So like the types of patients we see would be, like I said, people with a health problem, and people who are interested in longevity, people who are athletes and are interested in peak performance, and people who are interested in peak cognitive performance. I would say those are kind of our main avatars. If let's say someone's coming in for longevity, we're going to really emphasize getting them this kind of like the lifestyle pillars for sure that we've already kind of discussed, as well as like healthy sleep and exercise and all of that. But we're going to balance their hormones. We're going to explore the use of peptides for anti-aging. We're going to institute a whole wide array of mitochondrial optimizing therapies, because we age because our mitochondria age. So you want to try to optimize mitochondrial function throughout your life.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the currently recognized hallmarks of aging too. So there's obviously a lot of importance there. But I don't know what your thoughts on this. I view, no matter your goals, as like everyone requiring the same fundamentals in order to thrive and to ideally optimize those goals. But like if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're not moving, if you're not getting enough nutrients, too much at the same time, if you're not managing stress levels, if you're focusing just on cognition or just athletic performance or longevity, and you're taking like the fanciest molecules out there and you're following like the latest trends and protocols, but your body is incredibly vitamin and mineral deficient, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle, and it's not going to work nearly as well as if you get the fundamental things right first.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely feel that there are lifestyle pillars that cannot be ignored. Like So we should just list them out. So one is sleep. We really want to optimize sleep. We know that poor sleep is associated with cognitive decline, associated with weight gain. It's associated with poor immunity, et cetera, et cetera. So what good sleep hygiene and sleep tracking so that you can kind of data drive your sleep and figure out what is the perfect formula in order to ensure a beautiful night's sleep. Exercise, I think, is non-negotiable. Everyone needs to do some form of exercise, and it's going to change throughout your lifetime. So you want to be focusing more and more, I think, on muscle building as you age, because muscle is the currency of longevity. We have the most mitochondria in our muscle cells and neurons. And, we want to kind of keep the population of mitochondria as high as possible. It's really interesting to watch how quickly someone ages when they're frail, and they don't have strong muscle mass, and then they're so prone to injury, and then they adopt more of a fearful kind of approach to moving around in the world, and that translates into so many bad directions. So, and then diet, which we talked about, and mindset, and just kind of like analyzing your thinking and the kind of predominant emotional response that your thoughts are generating, and meditation.
Yeah, it's so hard to nail down a succinct list because you can make a very strong case for the environments you're in. And if they're like flooded with non-native EMFs and mold and you're mycotoxin sensitive, you'll be fighting an uphill battle the whole time. You can talk about sunlight and breath work and like all these different things. It's really hard just to like use the top 3 things you really need to focus on.
Like, it's the 5 pillars. No, it's the 7 pillars. No, it's the 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the hallmarks of aging. It used to be just the 3 hallmarks, and then it was like the 9. Now it's like 12. And I'm like, in a couple of years, it's going to be the top 50 hallmarks of aging, and it's just going to keep growing. One thing that I've read about in some of your work is the importance of geometry. Can you break down that for me?
Well, I hope so. Geometry, when we talk about information signatures, they are geometrical. I kind of can even go back to like the atom. So when you have an atom, you've got the protons in the center, and then you maybe remember back to high school physics or chemistry. You have electrons whizzing around the nucleus, right? And they're going to be whizzing around in particular orbits, and you'll have a certain number of electrons based on what atom it is, and it'll be in more than one orbit in more complex atoms. Well, that movement of those electrons around that nucleus creates an electromagnetic field, but it's not like linear, it's geometrical. And so I believe that's where the geometry starts. And then you have atoms coming together as molecules, and they come in a particular arrangement that has geometry. And so then those molecules turn into macromolecules that have geometry. And so our body is kind of like a series of nested geometries. And it's creating this complex geometry that is kind of the scaffolding, literally, of these energetic waves that make us appear to be these physical beings.
And if you change the structure of one part of the body, all of a sudden you might notice that a completely different part of the body feels differently. Like an issue with back pain may resolve when you stretch your legs. And there's all kinds of really complex relationships that happen throughout the body based on geometry and structure and function.
Yeah. And tension planes and the whole fascial connections. It's so cool.
How does that relate to sacred geometry?
Well, I believe that all of nature really adheres to certain laws, and there are patterns that repeat themselves across all scales through nature. And I was actually told that by a childhood mentor who said to me, he was a doctor, but he was also a philosopher and a mystic and art collector and scientist. And linguist and brilliant person. And he just said, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, study the human body, because all of the laws are encoded within. And it's really, you could say that about any aspect of nature. They're encoded within the way the trees grow and the way the flowers form and the way that the insects fly and all of that. And then when you get into studying quantum physics, it's all down there too. So it's so cool. Like when you look at the work of Nassim Haramein, for example, who has described kind of like the geometry, let's say, of the Planck field. Planck is thought to be the smallest particle that the universe does. Our known universe. That's like the pixel or the voxel, let's say, because it's three-dimensional. But it is the way the Plancks are organized, create these geometrical arrangements that kind of form the proton and the different subatomic particles, and then those are creating the geometries of the atom, and it's just geometry from the ground all the way up, and the same patterns with the same kind of mathematical laws and ratios repeat from the infinitely small to the infinitely large.
And in nature, there's patterns that follow those very precise mathematical formulas, such as the fractals. And the research shows that when you focus on those, it has an instantly calming effect on the body and the nervous system. And it's not known exactly why, but it's probably because of the mathematical relationship and the fact that this is geometry that humans evolved alongside, and it has that effect, versus most of the things we build ourselves completely disregard these precise ratios and formulas.
Yeah, it is true. And I believe it's calming and kind of analogous to how going into like untouched, pristine nature, like an old growth redwood forest or something. It almost feels like you're walking into a sacred cathedral. And I think it's such a coherent field itself that has those undisturbed patterns and ratios that then our bodies can move into greater resonance with that. And it reinforces the proper patterning in our own bodies. The highly coherent field of nature can almost transmute the dissonant signatures that we collect.
Which would be one reason that going into nature feels good almost universally.
Yeah.
Have you played around, or do you like any of the modern inventions and technologies that purportedly help with the sacred geometry?
Yeah, I have. There's Ide Pyramids, that company. I've spent some time in their pyramids. That feels really good. I spent time in the Great Pyramids of Giza. That feels amazing. But yes, and I also really, my favorite kind of technology is Scalar. And so I kind of been liken it to how you can structure water. So you can drink regular water that's not structured, or you can drink structured water, and it has more viscosity, it softness. It's almost like thick. You can feel it. Same with space. So you can go into a room, or you can go into a room that has some technology that is structuring the space. And I believe the space becomes more crystalline in nature and can therefore act more like an amplifying conduit between the infinite energy of the unified field that we exist within and our physiology.
Would you see this on an atomic level? Where would it become more crystalline?
Yeah, I mean, it would be at the quantum level. But there's, like, for example, we used to, in my old clinic, we had this little room, and we had really powerful scalar generator in there. People that were super sick would go into that room and just feel like automatically calming, the calming effect on their nervous system.
Interesting. Okay, you've mentioned those technologies several times. What are some of the more modern technologies, devices, systems, biohacks? Although I know you don't like the term biohacks, and neither do I. Biooptimization systems that you use in Jyzen.
I use so many. So red light near infrared light beds are a favorite. So we have 3 Novithor beds, and the research on red light is really extraordinary for upregulating mitochondria, for releasing tissue-specific growth factors, for reducing inflammation, for speeding healing and repair. And so we use that a lot. We have an infrared ozone sauna called a HOC that also has a powerful pulsed electromagnetic field device associated with it and frequency delivery. So the Hocket is an incredible tool with just layers of technology. And we really have that booked every hour, every day. People love it. And you can dial in frequencies to just support whatever health goals you have. Like if you're trying to detox, you can dial in frequencies to open up pathways of elimination through the kidneys, lymphatics, and liver. And then you've, of course, got the heat from the infrared sauna aspect, and then it's an ozone sauna. So you're delivering ozone into the chamber. And then the pulse electromagnetic field component of the therapy is charging your cell membranes with electrons and your whole body with electrons. So that feels amazing. And we have walking cryotherapy. We have a whole neuroscience wing. And so we have a neuroscientist here that does 19-channel EEG brain mapping. And she's so good at finding the underpinnings for, kind of the like childhood trauma or birth trauma or kind of limbic system locked on that could lead to autonomic nervous system imbalance. She's so good at diagnosing brain trauma from car accidents, sports injuries, falling off a swing as a kid or whatever. And then we employed multiple types of neurotechnologies, whether it's targeted zeolite, exercise with while breathing oxygen, pulsed electromagnetic field coils that placed at very precise areas of the brain to either upregulate areas of low voltage or calm down areas of kind of overactivity. She can usually do that in short periods of time. We do a lot with oxygen here. So we have intermittent hypoxic training.
I was looking for an at-home device. It doesn't seem like there's anything that's that great. Have you seen any good at-home hypoxia, like IHT?
Yeah, I personally wouldn't want to do it at home because I think it's good to have a coach that is, to have someone who's monitoring you, because you're cycling into mild hypoxia and back. And, it's nice to have someone with eyes on the screen that are looking at your heart rate variability and, your O2 sat and all of that.
Will you explain what it is? I haven't covered IHT at all on the podcast.
Yeah. So we have 2 forms of it here. So one of it, we have the largest installation of a technology called Jyzen. And it's a passive technology. So you're lying just in a recliner chair and you're breathing oxygen through a mask. And then the coach cycles you from normal levels of oxygen to mild hypoxia and back 4 times in a 40-minute session. And so it's analogous to being at sea level and going up to altitude and then coming down 4 times. And of course, there's degrees of altitude that you can experience, and it's based on your tolerance to it, your O2 sat, your heart rate variability, your pulse, etc. So it's really good to have someone watching you. But what this process does, if you do a series of these, is it's been shown to release something called HIF-1 alpha, which in 2019, 3 scientists won the Nobel Prize for discovering HIF-1 alpha and figuring out what it does. But it's a master gene regulator that triggers the transcription of thousands of genes in the body that code for products that are involved in how we utilize oxygen for fuel and how efficiently our mitochondria use glucose and oxygen to make ATP. It enhances hemoglobin levels. It enhances sprouting of capillaries into the tissues so that you have better blood delivery. It enhances the coupling of oxygen with the first enzyme in the electron transport chain of the mitochondria. The effects go on and on. But the cool thing, you're so right to say, there's enormous amounts of clinical research on it. So it's been shown to help people with diabetes, to reverse metabolic syndrome. It's been shown to help neurodegenerative diseases and cognitive decline and peripheral neuropathy. It's been helpful for infertility, been helpful for chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. And
Before you go on, are there any other great ways of activating HIF-1 alpha?
there are, most technology based though. So, hyperbaric oxygen can do it too. Because when you get out of the chamber, there's a relative fall in your oxygen, and then that triggers HIF-1 alpha. Active training with breathing oxygen. There's that, like we do Live O2 on a bike, and we do Live O2 with Vasper devices here. And you can do that where you're varying the oxygen level from between hypoxia and even hyperoxia as someone is going through a workout. Now, there is some anecdotal data suggesting that like Wim Hof breathing techniques and certain types of practices like running up a hill while holding your breath, can release HIF-1 alpha. Plain and simply, going to altitude and training at altitude will eventually release HIF-1 alpha.
Yeah, I was going to say mechanistically it would make sense for some like really intense breath work to be able to do that. I'm not sure to the degree, but it would make sense, stands to reason. I've seen some papers about the contrast of the intermittent hypoxic training not being all that great for sports. That seemed counterintuitive to me. It seemed like it should be really helpful. Have you come across that?
I disagree. I mean, like, there's so many Olympic athletes that you're not really supposed to talk about that have used this that are like multi-gold medalists. I mean, remember when they held the Winter Olympics in Mexico City, and then athletes around the world realized like they better start training at altitude in order to compete?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
We do a lot of nano V where you're breathing structured water. We have a lot of technologies like in our bodywork center where we work with lasers and shock waves. Are you familiar with focal and radial shock waves for breaking up adhesions? It's focused ultrasound, and it's kind of the dialed in properly to break up fascial adhesions. So, and then the focal shock wave can break up scar tissue in joints, and then can also stimulate stem cell release in the joints. And then a lot of the intravenous treatments we do, I would consider kind of biooptimization technology. So, NADIVs for upregulating mitochondrial function, and peptide therapy, do a ton of different types of IVs. But yeah. So the difference, in my opinion, between biohacking and biooptimization is that here I'm an early adopter of everything I just mentioned. I've been working with these things for 10 years. So I've learned kind of the ups and downs, the pitfalls, like how to stack these things together, what things are good for what conditions, in what order, and who's going to tolerate them well, who's not. Like I've kind of just learned through trial and error all of these things. And if you're biohacking, you have to go through all that trial and error on yourself. And people often fall into pitfalls where they're like, oh, this worked for so-and-so, it's going to work for me. And we're talking even like intermittent fasting or ketogenic diets, they don't work for everybody. Or they might work for you for a small period of time, but it's not good for a long period of time. So people have like, what works for some works for everyone. If some is good, more is better. Like they often overdo the biohacking technologies, and really there's a bell-shaped curve of effectiveness. So at the low end, if you're not doing enough, it's not going to do much. But if you overdo, it's counterproductive, and you really need to find that sweet spot in the middle. And that's the time you're doing it, the frequency with which you're doing it, the intensity of it, etc. So biooptimization is where you have these skilled professionals that are curating programs for you that are kind of based data-driven and help you reach your goals in the shortest period of time in the safest manner.
So there's a couple layers to what you just said that are all very fascinating. And the first is that we're looking at the what oftentimes, like, okay, red light therapy, sure. The research shows that it's good. Infrared light therapy, good. But then there's also the dose, how much you're getting. There's the nuance of context, like when are you doing it? Why are you doing it? If you're using it to like banish and like reduce stress because something big just happened, yeah, it might work really well, but it's even more effective if you didn't have that like major stressor before it. So how do you layer in like the individuality, and then there's like genetics and epigenetics and everything? Like, how do you make sure that you're checking all those boxes and doing something that's going to benefit you net instead of just following what the latest trends say?
Main thing, like if you're trying to figure it out on your own, is being in tune with your body and really being objective, and almost like checking in. Okay, how do I feel right now before I start this? Then let's say I'm doing an ice bath. How do I feel afterward? I mean, during it, and then how do I feel after? And right away after, 2 hours after, the next day, like, you know, if it's not uncommon for someone where the ice bath is not good for them, that it's going to weaken them. They're going to feel sick. You know, it's like it's such a stress that it depletes them, and then they're ending up, you know, getting sick or something like that. So you have to be really objective if you're doing it yourself.
For me, creatine is one of those things, like I love the data behind it. I tried it for the last 10 years, used it consistently, every different form, every dose, ranging from 2 grams up to 20 grams a day. I've taken breaks. I've tried just about every possible permutation, like creatine absorption enhancers, combining it with carbohydrates, not using carbohydrates. And I've seen like influencers saying on Instagram and other places that it's 100% effective. Yet the research also says there's creatine non-responders. And sadly, I fall into one of those camps. So as compelling as the data is, it's still not going to be something that helps me, at least not in a noticeable way. I don't get any of the strength or power benefits. I don't even gain water weight from it. So
fully agree. Yeah, there's no one thing that's right for everybody.
But are you guys in clinic layering on genetics or like epigenetics or anything else when you're working on someone's like bio-individual biooptimization program?
Mm-hmm. A little bit. I mean, I do feel epigenetics are more important than genetics. And so to me, it's really the environment that your genes are bathed in, and that trumps the genes themselves in most circumstances. But we do genetic testing looking at methylation pathways and things like that, so we can at least advise appropriately the right types of supplementation.
I interviewed David Reed a couple of months back, and I've been using Monovitality, which you are involved in. I'm curious if there are any nutrients or supplements or substances that you find particularly fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, Manna is by far and away my favorite supplement that I take every day. And because it's just loaded with fulvic and humic acids, so it's minerals in their most bioavailable form, and as well as other nutrients. And it just has such fantastic data associated with it in the modern day. Now, so much research has been done showing it's a potent nootropic. It's good for maintaining healthy hormone levels. It's good for mitochondria. It's good for the immune system. It's good for sexual prowess and sexual drive, and for our ability to to utilize oxygen efficiently. And there's just so much good data around it, and it feels good. Like you can tell immediately after taking it, like your brain lights up and everything works better. So I do love that. And it's easy for me to remember to take it every day because I feel the difference when I do. The other supplement that I take every day right now is urolithin A. And that is a supplement that is really good for stimulating mitophagy. So it is going to help the body kind of edit, repair, or replace damaged mitochondria and birth new mitochondria. And I've been taking fatty 15, that newly discovered fatty acid that's associated with longevity. It makes a lot of sense to me. And I can't say that I feel the difference, but I like the idea of populating my cell membranes with this fatty acid. And I take magnesium L-threonate every day at night. It's one thing that's just really great for my sleep, and I can tell the difference on my aura ring readings and just, how well I sleep. And then I just have a couple personal favorites. I always love taking milk thistle, dandelion root, artichoke. So I have
What do you notice from those aside from like
I,
improved liver function?
yeah, it gives me clear skin, like shiny, like radiant skin. And some people say, "Oh, you don't want to take them all the time." Well, I do because I love it. I just can really tell if I run out of that. And beta-glucan. So one of the other products I probably know more about than anything else, of any other product in the world, is beta-glucan. I am a chief medical officer of a company that is producing an immune modulator, and the key scientist in the company happens to also be probably the world's third leading author on research in beta-glucan, and he's an incredible immunologist. And so I've just learned so much about the health benefits of beta-glucan. It is the most researched nutraceutical for the immune system in the world. If you go to beta-glucan.org, you will find thousands of papers of how it affects the human immune system. And then Dr. Hunter, the scientist I work with, has patented a method for keeping it in a microparticulate form that interacts more beneficially with the immune system. It's more bioavailable. And the miracles I've seen with beta-glucan and like pulling people out of viral illness or kind of training the immune system to be more efficient is just mind-blowing.
Do you have any favorite natural sources? Like obviously they're very prevalent in mushrooms, like the functional adaptogenic mushrooms.
Yeah, the beta-glucan working with is from yeast, but Trametes versicolor mushroom is the turkey tail mushroom, has really good beta-glucan in it. Great research on that. So I tend to consume a lot of good quality culinary mushrooms because I think it's just important to keep that beta-glucan coming in a variety of ways.
I love that beta glucans modulate the immune system too. They don't indiscriminately boost or suppress it.
You know about that. Yeah, it's so cool. But there's this new concept. A lot of papers are being written on something called trained immunity, where the innate immune system can be trained. And that's kind of new thinking,
Wow.
where you can kind of just like you can train your muscles to be stronger, you can train your innate immune system to be more effective. And beta glucan is what is being studied and showing the greatest response for trained immunity.
Dr. Beth, you are on the forefront of these things and the cool technologies and some of the research. What do you see coming down the pike in terms of fascinating new molecules or therapies or biohacks?
Well, I know what I want to create. And I'd like to create, you hear a lot of lore out there about, oh, the med bed. I have yet to see a good med bed, and I've yet to really be able to vet the technology and see that what's claimed to be a med bed is actually doing anything good. I have had a privileged life especially over my whole life, but especially over the last decade, of being able to travel the world and meet some of the brightest scientists around the world working in new thinking in physics, and some of the brightest engineers and some of the brightest doctors. And I have a team of people that, we talk about creating like a med chamber kind of thing to be able to go into. And I really believe that science fiction eventually becomes reality. And some of those old movies where you put someone in a chamber and they'd regrow a limb, or they would, they could get rid of cancer or whatever. I think that's what we'll see in the future.
On the other end of the spectrum, are there any ancestral health or ancient medicine practices that you're currently on or think that should be getting more attention than they currently are?
Manna Gold is the next product that's coming out in the Manna line. And that's bringing back some ancient technology from ancient Egypt. And
What's in it?
So it's the same mana. So it's basically the shilajit from the Himalayas, so very high altitude shilajit that's free of heavy metals and contaminants, and then it's dead sea water and vortexed in such a way to produce some ormus precipitants, and then it's nano gold in various particles. There's 5 milligrams of gold in every sachet, and it's nanoparticles in various sizes. And gold nanoparticles can absorb light at different wavelengths. So the different particle sizes and geometries absorb different wavelengths of light. And then through plasma resonance, they release the light in the body. So we are basically a virtual light show within our bodies. And so we're enhancing kind of the communication of the light wavelengths in the body with the gold.
Yeah, I've been hearing more about photodynamic therapy of people like ingesting certain clean metals like silvers and golds and like obviously the nano form, or like not like just a straight gold bar or anything, and that having good effects. And I'm also thinking at the same time, I wonder how having higher levels of heavy metals would influence the way light impacts our biology.
Well, that's a really interesting question. I have not looked into that, but I bet you it does. And I always think about, I've noticed over the years that my patients that are exquisitely electromagnetically sensitive often have heavy metals. It's a synergistic phenomenon. And if you can clean out the heavy metals, they become a little less sensitive. And there are people that literally can't even live in the world. They're so sensitive.
Do you use any EMF protection or harmonization or shielding devices?
Yes, I do. And I'm still always on the lookout for the best ones, but I do, like I plug in scalar generators to my outlets. I have my home remediated for dirty electricity. I, like I said, turn off Wi-Fi at night. I can't even tell you the names, but I have a couple devices around the house. Can't really say.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you come across anything that you notice a profound shift, let me know and I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, I have some of those same things. Like I do a lot of those things. I don't own the house I live in, so I'm not going to remediate everything, but I use the blocking whenever possible. I have the devices that help harmonize. I use hardwire whenever possible, but then when you're using your phone, like, yeah, you can use headphones. You still get a little bit of I think it's dirty electricity through the wired headphones, but it's definitely better than having a Bluetooth signal beamed into your brain. And I changed my phone settings to use 4G and LTE instead of that latest 5G because of the information I've read about it. And it's another one of those areas where you can go all out and you can live kind of like a Luddite without technology. And I couldn't be on the computer with you right now if I was doing that. But you can also do some simple harm mitigation strategies to enjoy the conveniences of modern technology and at the same time give your biology a little bit of a break, especially when sleeping, when you're trying to repair and regenerate. We've covered a lot of ground today. I've been going for a while. If people want to connect with you, to find your work, to check out your clinic, do you call it clinic? Jyzen?
Yeah, Jyzen.com. You can find me on social media, Beth McDougall, MD.
Again, I'll put all these in the show notes. I have a couple more questions for you before we part ways today. If there was a worldwide burning of the books and all knowledge on earth is lost, but you get to save the works of 3 teachers, who would you choose and why?
Eckhart Tolle would be one, Rudolf Steiner, and Walter Russell, the physicist, Ruth Drown.
I don't know the last one, but the other ones I'm familiar with. Steiner has some really great quotes. I actually have one on I have a Steiner quote right there. It says, "Man will continue to reinvent technologies outside himself until he either destroys the world or realizes that all the technologies he's created are inferior copies of what is already inside him."
That resonates with me so deeply. We
That is
are the greatest technology.
Well, Dr. Beth, if people have made it this far, how would you like to leave them? Any final messages?
Just, yeah, I mean, we've talked about so many things that you can do for your health, but it really, the only way you're going to know if you're doing the right thing for your health is if you tune in and really foster a good relationship with yourself so that you are aware of how things make you feel, because that's going to be your guiding light so that you can figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. 5 years ago, when I was maybe 10 years ago, when I was getting started in this journey, if someone said to tune into how I feel, I'm not sure exactly what I would have done. But now, like, to me, that means just the easiest way is sitting in silence, observing my thoughts and the way I feel. If my attention goes to a certain body part that's hurting, putting my focus there for a second, and then noticing that it transmutes and that part no longer feels the same way, and then just letting that continue. And that was how I started to build like bodily awareness. Do you have any tips or tricks you like to do for that?
That is very similar to what I recommend. But I think grounding is a good thing. So grounding your energy, just virtually, just imagining dropping like a grounding anchor from your first chakra, kind of perineum area, down into the earth, and anchoring your body and your whole auric field like down into the earth field, and then tuning into what you're holding in the body, like you mentioned, Nick. And that is a great way to not only kind of tune in to those areas, but then release the tension that's held there.
I love it. That is the perfect way to bring this one home. Dr. Beth McDougall, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And I look forward to visiting Jyzen and saying hi to you when I'm back in Mill Valley.
Okay, you're welcome anytime. Let us know when you're coming.
Thank you. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and hit the thumbs up. I love knowing who's in the 1% committed to reaching their full potential. Comment 1% below so that I know who you are. For all the resources and links, meet me on my website at mindbodypeak.com. I appreciate you and look forward to connecting with you. As a reminder, the information depicted in this video is for information purposes only. Please consult your primary healthcare professional before making any lifestyle changes.